of the devastated areas. The ones that were severely damaged, like Lakeview, are really, really, really slow to come back. There is a lot of action there, and I think one of the bright spots in Lakeview, it's kind of ironic, is all of the demolition that's gone on. There have been, I think, more demolitions probably in Lakeview than there have in most other major sections of the city. Pre-Katrina, there were about 10,000 households in the whole of Lakeview, which reaches a fairly large swath of land. And I would say 90%, close to 90%, were pretty seriously damaged. So there's a lot of comeback to do there. But what we are seeing is that there have been a lot of permits issued for demolitions, and a lot of demolitions have occurred. If you drive along Canal Boulevard, for instance, now, you'll see, you would be surprised, if you haven't been in that direction recently, you'd be surprised at how many empty lots there are now. Oddly, it seems kind of better, it looks cleaner that way than the awful vacant housing that was there before. So there is some, kind of gives you a ray of hope. But I think some other rays of hope that are going on are activities in the commercial sector, because Lakeview was a very vibrant neighborhood on its own, and part of that was because they had some very successful businesses, particularly along the Harrison Avenue corridor, that was very successful in terms of retail, banks, and a lot of other things. And the banks were quick to come back in some form or another. Gulf Coast Bank, which had just built a brand new branch on Harrison Avenue before the storm, came back very quickly and refurbished that branch and got it back open again. So they were really the first bank back in a full-fledged way in Lakeview. Other major banks have gone back in temporary quarters while they repair their branches. And I think they're kind of waiting just to see how much population is going to come back before they decide how many branches to open. But there have been some other retail, some restaurants that have come back. Touche Cafe, for instance, has gone in where Charlie's Deli was. Excuse me. And we've seen at the west end, the upper end of Lakeview, we've seen Marina Grill, for instance, and Pontchartrain Point restaurant come back pretty quickly. And of course, they've been very busy because there aren't too many others open. But I think one of the biggest things that you want to see in a neighborhood, and if you go to the neighborhood meetings with the planning meetings, one of the biggest cries you hear is for a grocery store. They all say, give us the groceries, and they regard it as a huge sign of the neighborhood coming back. So far, Lakeview has been lacking in a grocery, and it was a bit of a setback when the owner of Lakeview Fine Foods finally decided that he was not going to reopen on Harrison Avenue. That was a major supermarket and very popular. The landlord there, though, tells me that there is interest by other grocers in that spot. They haven't signed a lease yet, but they're still working on it. More promising, I think, is probably at the upper end of Lakeview on Robert E. Lee and West End, where Robert Fresh Market operated before. That whole area was just devastated in the flood. And he has a lot of work to do there, but he has come to an agreement with the landlord. They've signed the final lease on that space and have begun some very, very preliminary work. There's a lot to do. He tells me that he even has to replace the slab in that store. It was so badly damaged, so only the walls will be able to be salvaged. So there's a lot of work, but he still hopes to have that store back open in March or April.
Will it be Robert again?
It'll be it's Mark Robert, and he has several stores in the works at the same time, so he's really got a lot on his plate right now. But I think that's a real promising sign for Lakeview. One more thing that I think is promising is restaurant. Fine dining. Mostly fine dining in the Lakeview area, you've had to rely on Ralph's on the Park, which is not a bad option at all, but it's at the lower end of Lakeview. The Steak Knife restaurant, which was very popular on Harrison Avenue, right in the heart of Lakeview, was terribly devastated, and it was one of the symbols of just how bad Lakeview got hurt because it was so wrecked. That building was just terrible. And the owners there, the Roth brothers, are bringing back the restaurant at the West End, in temporary quarters over at West End at the former site of the Voodoo Grill, or Voodoo Barbecue, I think it was called. And what their hope is to open the restaurant there while they work on the Harrison Avenue site, and then eventually move it back, Steak Knife, back to Harrison Avenue.
You have Harry Connick singing again at night. Used to Harry Connick Seniors.
That's right, and the Marcellus brothers appeared when we show up.